monthly programs. There we go. These monthly programs have noteworthy speakers on a variety of subjects relating to the environment, environmental stewardship, wildlife, nature, public policy, outdoor activities, such as hiking and canoeing, and a whole lot of other interesting topics. Our speaker meetings are on the second Sunday of every month, online at 7 p.m. They're free and they're open to the public, but you do need to register in advance. In a moment, we'll hear from our featured speaker this evening, Maggie Cooper of the Shedd Aquarium, who will talk to us about microplastics in our aquatic ecosystems. Afterwards, we'll share some news of what the Woods and Wetlands Group is doing to reduce single-use plastics. So be sure and stick around after tonight's presentation to learn about ways you can get involved. Addressing the plastic problem. First, a couple of announcements. First of all, as Doug said, we are recording this so that you can watch it later. Please make sure you're muted all during this the presentation. Also, be sure to mark your calendar for our next speaker meeting on May 8th. And we'll hear then from an activist with the Sea Shepherds Conservation Society, which is dedicated to protecting marine wildlife in the oceans. More on that later. Finally, feel free to ask any questions of our speaker this evening by using the chat function, which you'll see it's a button at the bottom of your screen. We'll choose questions afterwards and put them to Maggie to answer. And now let's move on to our featured presentation this evening. We're delighted to welcome Maggie Cooper of Chicago's Shedd Aquarium. She is the coordinator of conservation action for the Shedd, and she organizes conservation stewardship programs aimed at developing an understanding of Great Lakes ecosystems and how we can work together to protect them. Her conservation work is wide-ranging, from plastic pollution to habitat restoration to community science. I'm sure you'll find this fascinating. So again, feel free to ask any questions of our speaker using the chat function at the bottom of the screen. And remember to stay online afterwards to learn how you can get involved in the Sierra Club. So Maggie, welcome to our Sunday speaker series. The floor is all yours.
Hello, thank you. Thank you, Sharon and Doug and Linda and everyone for having me here today. If you're just joining, I apologize for my squeaky voice today. I woke up a little bit with no voice, so I'm going to make it through here for you, but excuse me if I have to take some pauses and drink some water and some tea to get through this for you all tonight, but happy to answer any questions and follow up and connect with anyone via email if I can't get to it today. So let me go ahead and share my screen. And if I can ask, who can I see here? Rosemary, can you give me a thumbs up that you can share my screen? Thank you. Let me make sure that I can scroll through here. Cool. So yeah, we are here today. Thank you. We are here today to talk about conservation action at Shedd Aquarium, which conservation at Shedd is pretty holistic and widespread, and we'll kind of touch on all the different things that we do. But our focus today is going to be on our plastic work. So just a quick agenda for today. We're going to take a deep dive into the problem of plastics, kind of with a focus right here on the Midwest. We're going to talk about Shedd's strategy for tackling plastic pollution, and we'll go over some ways that you can get involved with not only us here at Shedd, but with some other really great organizations locally here in the Midwest and throughout the country as well. So I find it helpful just when we're talking about plastics to kind of take a step back and look at where it all began. So all the way back in 1907, just over 100 years ago, plastic was invented. And it has grown incredibly since, with particularly during World War II, when we were needing to manufacture a lot of strong, durable things super quickly and cheaply. We saw a huge increase in the production of plastics, with over about 300% increase during that time. In the 1950s, the Keep America Beautiful campaign was founded by the packaging industry. People like the Coca-Cola company and the Dixie Cup company formed this advocation participation campaign to convince people to keep America beautiful by ways that weren't necessarily addressing the problem of plastics or with litter. So KAB, which still exists today, was formed to discourage littering. Which is, as we know, only about a tiny little part of where our plastic problem comes from. Litter is not the main source of plastic showing up in our waterways. And this kind of led to the emergence of anti-littering ordinances that we saw throughout the 1950s and 1960s. So we saw a lot of focus on that and not really anything being done about the problem with plastics or with litter in general. Not a single restriction was put on packaging being made. All the focus was on hey, don't litter, don't be a litter bug. In the 1960s, we had our first recorded case of plastic debris being observed in the ocean. And around the 1970s, we saw a lot of growth around the concerns for the environment. And this was really highlighted in 1972 with the pass of the Clean Water Act, which started to really regulate and enforce cleaning up of our waterways. So all navigable waterways under this act are managed and patrolled and made sure that they are being cleaned. One of those toxins that is not part of that just yet is plastic. We know that plastic waste is a problem in our waterways, but it is not managed or regulated like other toxins in the water. So that's something that activists today are trying to get added into the Clean Water Act. In the 1980s, the plastic industry started to lead for a push of recycling as part of waste management systems. So again, taking the onus off of them, not doing anything to reduce plastic from being created, but saying, hey, this is the solution, we can recycle and that'll take care of everything. But we know that this isn't necessarily the case. We know that recycling isn't really the answer to reducing our plastic problem. So as this graph shows here, all the solid lines are data that currently exist and the dotted lines are our projections. So we can see that we are projected to keep exponentially creating a huge amount of waste over the next 30 years. The black line shows all of the primary waste that is generated, while the blue line on the bottom shows what's actually recycled. So in the Chicago area and in most of the US, we know that only about 9% of trash actually gets recycled. The rest of it ends up in landfills or over in our environments, which is not okay. It's not a good solution. So this is, again, just highlighting that recycling isn't necessarily the answer that we're looking for. So title here got cut off. We have plastics in our rivers, in our oceans, in our wetlands. What's the big deal? We know that our rivers are a huge conduit for trash. So like I said, if plastic isn't getting recycled, it's ending up in a landfill or more often than not into our environment. So even if you're in a park, if you're landlocked, that trash is still going to get blown into our waterways, and from there via river or wetland or other ecosystem lands in our Great Lakes. And we know that roughly 22 million pounds of plastic each year enter the Great Lakes. And of that, about half of that is coming into Lake Michigan alone. So just about every single year, 11 million pounds of trash are entering Lake Michigan. And it's not looking like it's slowing down anytime soon. So we need to be creative and start thinking about what we can do next. So, excuse me. We have plastic in our rivers and our lakes. What of it? Why does that matter to us? Well, we know that it affects us all. Recent studies from the past 5 years or so have really started to show how it's not just a problem for the animals that are calling those spaces home, but for us as well. Research from 2018, they sampled breweries from all around the Great Lakes. They sampled around 30 different breweries who were sourcing their water to make their beer and found microplastics in every instance in all of the beers that were made with Great Lakes water systems. From that continues to grow. That's going in our bodies. It's in our beer, it's in our tap water as well. And even just recently, studies from this year are showing that scientists are starting to find microplastics in human blood. It's starting to become evident in our own bodies. Studies from last year as well showed evidence of microplastics for the first time ever in human placentas. And even just this week, I read an article about plastics being found in human lung tissue. What's super worrisome about this is we're just finding out this to be the problem now. It's something we've kind of theorized and considered might be an issue, but we don't know what the long-term effects of that is going to be on our bodies. What does having blood in our, or plastic in our blood going to do for us in the long term? It's only a matter of time before we find out what that is. And we have time now, some power now to help the problem by preventing plastic. And we saw this problem totally exacerbate during the pandemic when we were all at home and buying PPE and ordering more takeout for our food. The pandemic really amplified our single-use plastic waste. There was a lot of worry about reusables being more likely to carry the COVID virus. This was shown to be untrue pretty quickly, but there was a lot of push from backers of the plastic industry, from the oil companies and the manufacturers of plastic were pushing this kind of false narrative that plastic was safer and better to use during the pandemic. And it's been hard for the kind of public opinion to kind of wrap our minds around that not being exactly the case. So we started to see, when we were all at home, we started to see anywhere from an estimated 40% to 300% increase in single-use plastic packaging over the years 2020 to 2021, which is an insanely huge amount of increase. And it started to slow down a little bit, but is not back to those pre-pandemic levels yet. But what's good about a little bit kind of silver lining in this is as we were all home and kind of forced to like be faced with our realities, it's caused a lot of reactions and a lot of people starting to be spurred to take action for this. We were all at home surrounded by our recycling bins that were overflowing all the time. It kind of got some gears turning, and we're starting to see some difference in trends in how people are reacting to this. So while yes, the problem increased significantly, it also forced people to kind of take a step back and look and find some creative solutions to the problem, and kind of growing and changing the trends of where plastic and plastic mitigation is headed. And this comes also as well with plastic impacting vulnerable communities. A lot of conversation is shifting on not just plastic and the plastic waste, but the issue of plastic all across the board, from its creation to its disposal to its recycling. Plastic all across the board, in fact, impacts vulnerable communities more than it does more affluent communities. So we saw this critical shift over the past couple of years in the goal of reducing plastic, where we're starting to understand that the problem of plastics impacts those frontline communities. So looking upstream, like I said, of the plastic life cycle from the oil extraction needed to create plastic and plastic production facilities polluting the air and waterways. They're more likely to be built next to low-income communities and communities of color, where they dump those toxins into the air and into the water, and it affects those communities. So, and looking downstream in the plastic life cycle, plastic trash is more likely to end up and concentrating in communities and countries that are less able or less equipped to properly manage that waste. So our throwaway culture has kind of unfortunately treated people as disposable, just as disposable plastics. But Shedd is looking to tackle the plastic pollution problem pretty holistically. And what's great about what Shedd does to tackle the plastic pollution problem is that it's not just Shedd doing it. Everything Shedd does on our conservation team, we are a very small conservation team. There's about 6 of us in our department. So we can't do anything without the help of our communities and of our volunteers. So everything that I'm about to talk about here and what Shedd is doing is awesome, in that everyone can be a part of it. So conservation at Shedd is pretty holistic. These are kind of all the different ways that Shedd approaches conservation. We have our animal rescue and rehab up in Canada, where we rescue otters and belugas and release them back. Policy and advocacy, which ties in really closely to our action and education, which is what we'll focus on. That is my jam, is the action and education. But we also have a really incredible team of researchers who are out there on the ground studying the effects of all the work that we do on these populations. And then Shedd itself, the building runs very sustainably. As of our recent audits, Shedd diverts about 78% of all waste from landfill. And it operates on almost full solar and on really great green generators as well. So first and foremost, just want to go through this slide on how we approach, conservation kind of at Shedd. These are kind of three generic bins here of individual actions, removal and reduction, and collective solutions. So these all work together. Without any one of these, the others don't work. So with our individual actions, where we encourage people to reduce their plastic use and advocate for sustainable practices, and putting kind of your money where your mouth is and using your dollar to show companies that you support the trends or things that they're doing. That ties in with our removal and reduction efforts to remove trash from urban areas and the environment, working with collaborators to develop new technologies and alternatives, and to create culture changes throughout the Chicagoland area and beyond. Shedd has a pretty large audience, 2 million visitors a year just at the building itself, but a pretty large digital audience as well. So we have the power to connect with people where they're at to create culture change throughout the country and beyond. And then collective solutions. So again, advocating for and implementing new policies, doing joint activism with other people here in the Chicagoland area, and supporting a circular economy, and again, in Chicago and throughout the US. So one of those ways that we take action for the environment is through our coastal habitat restoration and cleanup. So Shedd has been acting as stewards throughout the Chicagoland area since the 90s. Shedd has been doing cleanups in the shadow of the building at 12th Street Beach, and it's grown incredibly as more and more people get activated and excited to help take action for their local habitats and for animals. And for the Great Lakes. So in 2021 alone, we had around over 1,000 volunteers join us for beach or river cleanups, where we collected over 7,000 pounds of trash from our local waterways, which is an alarming number to hear, but it's so great and so amazing that these people were activated and eager to get out there to remove that trash from the environment. So we just had our first beach cleanup actually of the season this past Saturday, and we collected about 400 pounds of trash. So it's still out there. We're still going. We're still trying to do it. And with volunteers, it makes it a really incredible experience. And what's really great about our beach cleanups is we partner with Alliance for the Great Lakes, who they have been doing beach cleanups all throughout the Midwest for years. And through them, they have a litter data sheet where people come, and we're not just picking up trash, but we are quantifying what we pick up as well. So we have these litter sheets, and we're marking down what types of plastic trash that we're finding. So if they tack off that they found one plastic bag or one takeout container or a floss stick or 73 different pieces of microplastic, this data is then used by individuals like our policy and advocacy team to fight for better plastic alternatives. And it's used by government officials to support things like our very own plastic bag tax that we have in Chicago. This type of data from finding so many plastic bags on our beaches was used to help implement that ban. And then when we post the bag tax being put out there, we were able to compare it to how many plastic bags we were then finding afterwards. And we did find a reduction in that number. And then that data can be used across the country and across the world. And it has been used across the world to advocate for similar policies in other areas. Similar to the beach cleanups we do, we also have a second shoreline here in Chicago on the Chicago River. The Chicago River gets a really, really bad rap for being polluted, and understandably why it has that reputation. It was really polluted for a long time. We might have heard of Bubbly Creek on the south side of Chicago, where it was so polluted that it actually bubbled. But it's come a long way, and the river is actually on most days perfectly swimmable. You can catch fish out of the river and eat it. But one thing that is really kind of still changing people's perception of the river into making them believe that it is dirty is the appearance of trash in the river. So like I said, there's not really any policy that is around that mitigate, or that helps to regulate trash in the river right now. So we work with the Chicago River Litter Task Force, similar to the beach cleanups, to take people out on kayaks to clean up and again tally what they are finding on their cleanups. So as they're collecting their trash, they're tallying what they're finding, and not just what it is that they're finding, but what the makeup of it is. Is it plastic, cardboard, paper, aluminum? And we send this data over to Loyola University, where there's a researcher who is taking this to analyze it and quantify what's being found. And the goal of this project is to inform policy around the river, to push for future policy around trash cleanup in the river. So maybe that looks like advocating for more garbage sweeps of the river. Right now, the city really only sweeps the downtown, the loop area for trash, but this could maybe help to advocate for that trash sweeping to be done more often in other areas of the river where trash is accumulating in different areas. Or it could help to support further legislation surrounding packaging materials and bans on certain types of materials. So I know a styrofoam ban was recently announced in Chicago, and from data and information like this, that helps to support and push for those types of policies being backed. So all in all, we see the work that we do on the ground with volunteers come to fruition with policy introductions. We encourage our visitors both in person and in the digital space to advocate for change. And we've seen in the past couple of years introduction of the plastic-free water ordinance, which was exciting and put out and announced at Shedd Aquarium. And excitingly, last summer, we announced the Plastic Pellet-Free Waters Act, which I will get to a little bit more on the science behind. This was announced at a little bit later in the presentation, but this would begin to hold manufacturers of plastic and plastic materials accountable, so that it's not just a cleanup effort that needs to be done, but is really a prevention from the top line up. So all in all, we have seen a shift in plastic messaging kind of change from removal over the years to prevention. So we've learned a lot from different things that we've done, and how we approach our plastic messaging now is that we want it to be inclusive. We want to meet people where they're at and guide them along their plastic reduction journey and celebrate commitments along the way. Not everyone can make every change, but we still want to work with people to be part of the solution. We want to be optimistic. A lot of the things that I've talked about can be pretty daunting. And we don't want people to feel hopeless about this. We don't share these facts and figures without connecting people to actions that they can take towards solutions. And we want to instill a strong belief into our audience that we can help. We can all help together. We want to be solutions oriented, to advocate for solutions at the individual, community, and governmental levels, and share solutions that we think are best with the appropriate audiences. We want to approach it all holistically. We have many calls to act that focus on individual choices, but we also work behind the scenes with businesses and policymakers and other society influences to ensure that the onus is not just on the consumer, and that we can tackle the plastic pollution crisis at the source. So this all means advocating for changes in a way that items are packaged or used, and calling for a shift to reusable is kind of the focus that we are moving forward with business practices in this next program that I'll talk about. So kind of the other tier of my job outside of doing beach cleanups and kayaks and doing all that removal stuff like I talked about and advocating for prevention that way is working with restaurants. So we work with restaurants in the Chicagoland area through a program called the Let's Shed Plastic program. So by joining this program, restaurants make a commitment to evaluate their plastic use and seek sustainable alternatives where possible. Restaurants can choose to take action in several ways. Some are super easy lifts, such as offering to-go cutlery by request only. We saw this law get passed or introduced in Chicago last year that would essentially make it law or be required to only be by demand only, but it's not being enforced really. So I want to work with restaurants to encourage that. that use or that change in policy. We implement an annual audit and reassessment of their plastic use, swapping single-use plastics for reusable alternatives, and more. Let's Shed Plastic collaborators have one common goal, and that's to reduce the amount of plastic waste that they are using that may end up in our rivers and our lakes and our oceans. But why restaurants? We look at restaurants as leaders in their communities. They have the power to alter social norms and drive change. We recognize that their influence provides an opportunity for that collective action that I mentioned. As data collected by beach cleanups and volunteers across the Great Lakes region shows, we know that roughly 1/3 of all items collected on beach cleanups are food related. This is data from pre-pandemic, so that number might even be even higher than that now. But things such as containers and cutlery, straws, bags, accounted for about 1/3 of all trash being found on beach cleanups. So the Let's Shed Plastic program aims to address this influx by working directly with restaurants who are committed to learn about, and if possible, where possible, taking the steps to reduce them. So it's a win-win for restaurants. There's a lot of data and reports showing that people are more likely to people will change their consumer habits based on if they believe that an act that they are doing is good for the environment. So we know that restaurants stand to gain new customers through making a commitment to reducing plastic. And we know that as well, doing things like swapping to reusables saves restaurants money in the long run. It might be a higher cost up front to purchase reusable stuff for dine-in, but after, in some instances, only 2 uses, they're going to save money as they move forward and continue to reuse those items. So kind of summarizing what Shedd's approaches to tackling the plastic crisis, we lead coastal cleanups on the Great Lakes and the Chicago River. Contribute to marine debris research. We focus on public education at the aquarium and offsite in communities, changing culture and practices, pushing for policy and advocacy, reducing the aquarium plastic footprint, and helping with restaurant industry technical support. I'm gonna make it through this before my voice is gone, promise. So how can you help? Locally, you can come join us in the field. We run our Great Lakes Action Days all year round. They shift in their focus depending on the time of year. We are just now starting our beach cleanup season. So in the winter months, we take people out to the forest reserves where we do habitat restoration, cutting down invasive trees and burning them on a fire. It's really fun and it keeps you warm in the winter time. But then when it gets warmer out and we're able to head out to the beaches, we head out to different areas all throughout the Chicagoland area, on the beach, on Lake Michigan, as well as on the Chicago River. Like I said, these take place year round, but our beach cleanup season focuses or begins, just started this month in April. It goes through the end of October. They are free to participate and dates are available now. You can find those on our website at sheddaquarium.org/action days. To come out with us, we host a variety of community work days where individuals can just come out and volunteer with us. But we also do group days when we're able to. So if you have a group you wanted to bring out, you can shoot us an email. Our website can be found on that site as well. And we can organize a private beach cleanup as well. And like I said, those are all done with Alliance for the Great Lakes, where we are tallying and submitting data to them. And they help us to host those, as well as the Chicago Park District. So we want our habitats, our beach habitats and our lake or our river habitats to be beautiful all the time. So not just free of trash, but we are also helping to restore some of the habitats along the shoreline. So we do that with some invasive removal and some plantings year round as well. The other program that I mentioned that people can join us for is our kayak program. So this is a paid program, but it is, we do it on a pay what you can pricing model so that hopefully anyone throughout the city can come join us. Prices start, you can pay as low as $20. If you think it's really cool and you're jazzed about it, you can pay up to $100 if you want to. That program begins June 1st and it goes Tickets go on sale May 1st. That program runs until the beginning of October. And that program, we take people out on kayaks. We pick up trash along the river as we find it. And again, we tie in habitat restoration as well. Like I said, the Chicago River has had its ups and downs. It's had its good days, its bad days, and we are hoping for more good days moving forward. So we are working with an organization there called Urban Rivers to reintroduce wetland species into the Chicago River. So recreating habitat that has been lost and bringing it back in a nice, cool, creative way to restore the Chicago River to its former glory. So you can find out more information about that at sheddaquarium.org/kayak. You can stay connected with us. Our Surge newsletter goes out once a month, and this is focused on providing people with conservation connections, not just here in Chicago, but throughout the country. So this snippet on the right here is just a little clip from the last Surge newsletter that went out, which focused on culinary conservation. I do just want to look at this one real quick because I do want to shout out this organization here that is mentioned, Ancora. They are a small startup that is trying to get started here in Chicago, where they are piloting a reusable takeoutware system. So they will be working with a couple of our restaurants that are part of our Let's Shed Plastic program to provide them with these reusable containers that people can take their food home in and then send them back to Ancora, where they will wash them and return them to the restaurants for another use. So again, it's really great for restaurants because they save money on not having to buy reusables or buy single-use plastics all the time, especially now where we're at everything I feel like has supply chain problems in the plastic industry is just one of those. So it's difficult and hard to get some of the packaging that restaurants need to operate their takeout systems. So Ancora not only fits into that environmental aspect of saving the plastic, but they fit into helping restaurants get the supplies that they need right now. So they will be piloting this summer in the Andersonville neighborhood of Chicago, and they will be helping with some of the street fests that Andersonville is doing as well. So not only will some restaurants be zero waste up there starting this summer, but we'll have some zero waste street fests as well with them. You can also follow us on Twitter at @ActWithShed, where we are constantly sharing up-to-date policies and events that you can support from anywhere. So it is our team that is running that. We don't have to try and compete with the penguins and the sea lions that you see on all of the other Shed networks. It's really hard for us to compete with them. So we do have our own action or Shed conservation action Twitter that you can follow us at @ActWithShed. Stay up to date. We'll share policies that you can support from home. One that is coming up that I know we'll be sharing about soon is making our national parks trash free. So we are helping to support a policy to eliminate all plastic water bottles from national parks. So we'll be sharing ways that you can help to support that over on our Twitter in the next coming weeks. Sign a letter, send it to your representatives and tell them to support that and other policies as well. We'll also share upcoming events that we have and any other cool conservation news that we see that we think people would be interested in. So you can support reuse systems. Like I said, I just talked about Ancora, but you can also support those restaurants that I said that are aiming to reduce plastic in their operations. All of our Let's Shed Plastic partners can be found on our website at sheddaquarium.org/plastic to see a list of participating restaurants. And I would love it if you could nominate one to join as well. We are always looking to bring new restaurants on board. And I think it's really great when people can share with me who their favorite restaurant is that they either already know or kind of doing some steps to go plastic free, or maybe they know that they just need a little bit help. Maybe they're using all styrofoam, and that's because they haven't had a conversation with anyone who can help them find feasible solutions. So I'm always down to have people nominate restaurants that I can reach out to, have a conversation with, and connect them to our resources. All restaurants that sign up for our Let's Shed Plastic program get connected to a toolkit where we have tons of different resources on ways that they can connect with their staff, with their customers, let them know these changes that they're doing and finding feasible solutions that work for them. And then check out some of our partners. Some of the ones that I mentioned earlier were Urban Rivers. You can come join us for a kayak if you think it's really cool. You can then sign up with Urban Rivers to be a river ranger. Their volunteer program is really awesome. You go visit their office once a week and then go kayak on the river and pick up trash for an hour-long shift every single week. And they do similar to what we're doing. They tally the litter that they're finding and share that as well with Loyola University. So again, helping to make that connection to support policy. Alliance for the Great Lakes is really great if you ever want to organize a beach cleanup on yourself. They can help set you up with leader training and help get you set up with supplies all throughout the Great Lakes. Any of the Great Lakes, you can reach out to them and they will have support for you. Friends of Chicago River is always doing really cool restoration all throughout the river system, and they do a lot of paddling cleanups on the Chicago River, canoeing cleanups, I think they call them, where you go out on a canoe and pick up trash. Nerdle Patrol is one that I'm excited to talk about. So Nerdle Patrol helped in large part for us to be able to introduce that Plastic Pellet Free Waters Act. So nurdles are the tiny little raw material of plastics. They look like a little clear bead, and that's how plastic is made. So when they need to make, I have a jar of honey right here next to me. So when they need to make this thing of honey, they melt down a ton of little beads of nurdles and then throw it into the form to make this plastic. But when they make those nurdles to get them shipped to where they need to go, they just kind of blow them into a shipping container. And as you might imagine, if anything happens, anything wonky, those nurdles will just get slipped right out of the system and go right into our waterways. And we find them all over our beaches here in the Midwest, but they are found all over the world on beaches. And Nerdle Patrol noticed this, saw this, and wanted to start documenting where they were found. So if you go to Nerdle Patrol's website, you can see their protocol. It's a quick 10-minute survey that you do on the beach, where you survey for nurdles for 10 minutes, comment your finding, and then report it on their website. And the goal is that they'll be able to track and document that nurdles are being found in areas near these nurdle manufacturing plants, so that they can then hold those manufacturers responsible for the action, so that we're not out there picking up nurdles every single day, so that they can be held accountable and we can find a better solution for nurdles rather than them just ending up on our beaches. And then the last one I'm going to mention is Break Free from Plastic. They are always out advocating and supporting for new policies. They are a huge one supporting that ordinance I just mentioned earlier about the plastic-free national parks. So you can check them out if you're super interested in following more plastic policy and how you can support and back that stuff from home. And then again, I just wanted to end on this slide again, because all of these things together are things we can always be doing from home. We can be taking our individual actions. I know it seems like individual actions might not go a very long way, but really when we all come together, they can create really big, cool collective change. We see this reflected in some of the companies making green changes. We see some water bottle companies switching to aluminum cans instead. We know when we all ask for something, we can drive change. So it takes individual actions to create that change. And then the collective solutions and removal and reduction, we can always be doing our part, taking action and coming together to help reduce plastic in our environment. So without further ado, I'm going to give my voice a quick little rest to try and answer any questions that you have. But please, if you couldn't hear me, you have a question, please feel free to shoot me an email and I'm happy to address any questions that you might have after this event.
Well, thank you very much, Maggie. We do have a couple of questions. Rosemary and I will be putting these forward. I think the second one you might be able to answer with a chat, putting it in the chat. But the first question is actually mine. Sorry. You mentioned the goal is to eliminate plastic bottles from the forest preserves and national parks. To be clear, you don't mean personal plastic bottles. You mean single-use plastic bottles. Am I correct?
Correct, yes. They are looking to support the ending, sorry, I'm not muted, right? Cool, yes, no, I'm good. To end the sale and distribution of single-use plastics inside of all national parks and national shorelines, any national park system.
Actually, in the United States, we have very good water, and there's really no reason for people to be buying these millions of buckets of water that they then throw away. Go ahead, Rosemary, I'll be quiet.
You don't have to be quiet. I'm just fiddling around with the spotlights here so that we're all front and center. Maggie, I felt like I was at a race to see if your voice would make it through the slideshow. So congratulations.
I downed a whole cup of tea and I'm almost out of my water. So bear with me.
Oh my gosh. And thank you. Thank you so much. We do have a few questions. One is from Marion Cartwright, who is interested in that litter sheet that you talked about. She takes students out to do beach cleanups in Lake Forest. And she's wondering if she can get a download of the litter sheets that you mentioned being used by Shedd and Alliance for the Great Lakes.
I do believe they should be available for download on the Alliance for the Great Lakes website. If you're doing the cleanups, especially if it's on the lake, which I assume if you're in Lake Forest, you are on the lake, you can register your cleanup with them as well. You can register it as a private group so other people aren't coming out, and they can get you all information. I only recommend registering so that you then are able to upload that data to them to use. But if you're just looking to kind of do it like with your class, with a cleanup, you should still be able to download it from their website. I'll take a look, and if I don't see it on there, I can send a copy of it over to Linda or Rosemary to get it connected to you.
And speaking of email, the screen went off too fast. Is it mcooper@sheddaquarium.what?
.org. I will drop it in the chat as well.
Okay, thank you.
That would be great if you drop it in the chat, and then everyone can get it. And also it'll be available later. We have a question from Kathy, whose daughter teaches AP Environmental Sciences. Oh gosh, I lost it.
Kenwood Academy
Go ahead, Rosemary.
Kenwood Academy in Kenwood, which I think is connected with the University of Chicago. And she was wondering if there was a way that she can connect with the Shedd, especially to get the students involved.
You know, I think we do beach cleanups with Kenwood Academy. So they may already be involved with us, but the person that she would want to be connected with at Shedd would be myself or my team. I can also drop just a general email that would go to every member of my team, which is actiondays@sheddaquarium.org into the chat. I'm wondering if I already know your daughter, Kathy, because they have come out for cleanups with us in the past, and I want to say we might have one on the schedule for the summer. But yeah, we do a lot of beach cleanups with students. It's really great when we are able to have high school groups out with us, high school or grade school groups with us. It's really fun. We get a lot of students that come out to Lake Michigan who have lived in Chicago their whole lives and they've never been to the beach before. So it's a really great way to get them out there and connected and understanding of their environment. Our beach cleanups, we come, we do an introduction, we go out and we do the whole activity. But we love to have time for students to just kind of like enjoy and understand the beach as well, especially if they've never been there before, but also getting them connected with kind of some of that ideas around plastic and plastic pollution and how they can bring that back into the classroom and connect it with what they've been learning as well. I
don't see any more questions.
Oh,
you have one more?
Yeah, I've got a couple here.
Okay.
One, so on the high school, to continue on the high school theme, Pat Walter was wondering about other high schools in the area that often have environmental clubs. Do you send out like high school, invitations to high schools on the general principles, or is it just if somebody knows to talk to you, or what is your outreach to high school environmental clubs like?
So in terms of like coming out for our cleanups and stuff, which is what my team's focuses on, I will not lie to you, we are pretty busy with those. So we don't tend to do too much outreach around it right now, just because of our capacity limits. We can't unfortunately be out there every single day doing it. There's not enough of us. But we also have a whole learning department at Shedd that does more like classroom visits and curriculum building around this. So the learning team at Shedd is really great. They haven't been doing classroom visits this year just because of COVID, but I'm hoping that will start back up again. And they can do, send someone in from our team, send a teacher in to discuss this curriculum in class. And help with that way as well. And they also have resources in the building for teens. There's a lot of, we have a teen lab where teens can come in and work alongside researchers and alongside experts. There's a couple other teen programs that I'm not super familiar with. They are a tangential, but just different enough department that I don't want to misspeak and say what they're offering right now, if they're not, just in case. But they have a lot of summer clubs and stuff coming up, which I think that list is getting released just about next month, where people can start signing up for stuff to do with them this summer.
And how would someone reach out to the learning team?
I can. So anyone can reach out to me and I can always redirect.
Okay.
Is what I would say.
Okay.
I'm trying to see if I can't find their website real quick.
Okay. Well, while you're doing that, Marion again is asking about plastic drinking water from single-use plastic water bottles. Aren't people exposing themselves to microplastics just by virtue of drinking out of those bottles?
Definitely. Unfortunately, if you've ever seen like a plastic water bottle with an expiration date on it, you might be thinking water doesn't expire, and you're correct. The expiration date isn't for the water, it's for the plastic itself. So it's a huge issue for sure. Our plastic packaging, our plastic food packaging, and our plastic water packaging, those are definitely exposing microplastics into their drinking water.
And this other question also from Marion, wonderful of Shedd would work. She mentions schools, cafeterias, hospitals, meat departments, styrofoam, and then if Shedd and others, and I'm sure Shedd would turn around and say, yes, why don't you do something, which is going to be my segue, if it's all right with Linda, to Sharon, because that's exactly what the Sierra Club is trying to be, is also proactive and taking the lead from research organizations like the Shedd. And we do have a plastics team here at the Woods and Wetlands Sierra Club. So Linda, I'm going to stop, and if you want to.
I just want to say that we're going to turn it over to Sharon, and Woods and Wetlands is the group of Sierra Club that extends in primarily Lake County, part of McHenry County, and into northern Cook County. But we welcome everyone to get involved, because it's not in our own neighborhood, it's everywhere. And so we're going to turn it over to the lovely Sharon.
And we're going to thank Maggie.
Thank you,
We want to thank Maggie too, and really appreciate.
And Maggie, yes, you're a real trooper. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you, Maggie, for sharing your time and your expertise, and for all the work that you and your team are doing to help our environment with the aquatic ecosystems. It's wonderful that you're doing it, and it's very exciting to be working alongside you. And I'm going to talk a little bit about what we're doing, and it does dovetail nicely with your activities. So before we get to that, just want to mention that next month on May 8th, we'll have another speaker meeting where we'll hear about the work of the Sea Shepherds Conservation Organization. That's an agency that's dedicated to protecting marine wildlife and ending the destruction of habitat in the world's oceans. Our speaker, Tamara Arenovich, has played a role in nearly a dozen interventions all around the world. So watch your email for the monthly Woods and Wetlands newsletter. That'll have more information about the next meetings. And please remember to register in advance to receive the online link. So before we close, I'd like to give you an update on the work that our plastics team is doing. Our goal, like the goal of the Shedd, is to reduce single-use plastics consumption and waste in our local communities. And our focus is on our local communities, which is one of the reasons that the work that we do, people from anywhere can join in. We've got people from many different counties in Illinois participating in our initiatives because we have our meetings online, and most of the activity is done in the individual members' local communities. So it's very scalable. Anyone can get involved. So our campaign is called Take a Pass on Plastics. And so far we've got 3 initiatives in the works. First, we started this last year. We have volunteers calling on independent restaurants in their local communities and asking them to make plastic cutlery and straws and condiment packets, etc., available only by customer request. And this aligns beautifully with what the Shedd Aquarium is doing in their Let's Shed Plastics campaign. In fact, last year when we started this restaurant initiative, the staff at the Shedd shared its resources with us and was really a big help to get us started. So next, really just in the last few months, we've launched a public awareness campaign. And the goal of that is to educate the public about the impact of plastics on the environment and on our health. It's something that is widely misunderstood or just not known. And there's a lot of education to be done there. And we're also providing information that helps individuals take action in their daily lives to reduce single-use plastics. You might have seen our tips, some of our tips so far in Facebook posts over the past month. We're continuing these, so be sure to follow the Woods and Wetlands group's Facebook page and you'll see more. You'll learn a lot of interesting things from those tips, and they really work to help you reduce your plastics footprint. We're also developing presentations for groups of all ages and all interests, and we'll deliver them at public venues such as libraries and community centers, as well as at schools, clubs, faith communities, and other organizations. And this year, we hope to expand our efforts to work with institutions. And I think that relates to one of the questions that was asked. We have a member of our team that's a high school student, and he joined because he wants his school cafeteria to become more environmentally responsible and get rid of the plastic and so on. And we've got people representing faith communities in our team, and they're working with churches and synagogues and to help them. And really, there are many, many institutions that serve food, and they're our prime target. We can really help them reduce their consumption of plastics. So that's what we're going to be working on this year. We always need new volunteers, and we're happy to welcome them at any time. If you want to join the plastics team, or if you just want to find out more about it, you can email me at scwwprojects@gmail.com. I'll put this in the chat so you don't have to remember it. And you can sign up, I'll post that. And also our Woods and Wetlands group web address. I'll put that in the chat as well, because you can sign up to receive our newsletter. And that way, let me just put this in here, Sharon. You. Gmail. Okay, and then Woods and Wetlands. is. There we go. So, let me get back to my notes here. So check our list of upcoming events, and you can also read about other campaigns that we've got going on in all kinds of different areas. There are a lot of interesting things to work on. Finally, if you want to become a member of the Sierra Club, just go to the sierraclub.org website and click on the join button over on the right-hand side of the homepage. You enter your zip code and it will automatically assign you to the Woods and Wetlands group or to another local Sierra Club group, depending upon where you live. And soon, when the pandemic is really behind us, we'll resume a full schedule of hiking, bicycling, paddling, all kinds of outdoor activities. And of course, the Sierra Club is always working on your behalf to promote a clean and safe environment. So we hope you'll get involved, and we hope to see you at next month's meeting on